Hi friends, today's video is about ischioanal fossa. It is a fat-filled, wedge-shaped space situated on each side of the anal canal below the pelvic diaphragm. So here we can see the perineum, a transverse line joining the anterior aspects of the ischial tuberosities divide the perineum into an anterior urogenital triangle, a posterior anal triangle. So here we have the anal orifice. On either side, we have the fat-filled, wedge-shaped fossa known as the ischioanal fossa or sometimes the ischiorectal fossa. Okay, so its dimensions, the length is about 5 centimeter, the width is about 2.5 centimeter, and the height is 5 to 6.2 centimeter. At this point, I hope you know what is a wedge shape. It is just like a pyramidal shape or in the form of a cake piece. So we have a base, an apex, and all those surfaces coming into its boundaries. And I think if we learn through the diagram, it will be more easy. So here, this diagram is enough for learning the base, apex and the lateral and medial walls. So here you can imagine a cone like this. So the base is formed by the skin of the perineum. The apex is formed by the line of fusion or the line where the obturator fascia meets the inferior fascia of the pelvic diaphragm. So here we have the obturator internus and the fascia covering is the obturator fascia. Then the levator ani is this which forms the pelvic diaphragm. So the fascia covering in its inferior aspect is the inferior fascia of the pelvic diaphragm. So the apex is formed by the line where the obturator fascia means the inferior fascia of the pelvic diaphragm, otherwise called the anal fascia. Okay, and this line corresponds to the origin of the levator ani from the lateral pelvic wall. Okay, then the lateral wall is more or less vertical as you can see. It is formed by the obturator internus with obturator fascia and the medial aspect of the ischial tuberosity below the attachment of the obturator fascia. Then the medial wall, it slopes downwards and medially. It is formed by the levator ani with the anal fascia in the upper part, then the external anal sphincter with the fascia covering it in the lower part. Now, anteriorly, it is limited by the posterior border of the perineal membrane, and posteriorly, the fossa reaches the lower border of the gluteus maximus and the sacrotuberous ligament. That's about the boundaries. Now, the recesses. The recesses are narrow extensions of the fossa beyond its boundaries. So, we have three recesses. First one, the anterior recess. So the anterior recess extends forwards above the perineal membrane, reaching almost up to the posterior surface of the body of the pubis. It is closely related to the prostate or the vagina. The second one is the posterior recess, which is smaller than the anterior. It extends deep to the sacrotuberous ligament. Finally, we have a horseshoe-shaped recess that connects two ischioanal fossa. It is situated just posterior to the anal canal. Now, going into the spaces and canals of the fossa, we have two spaces and one canal. So, the spaces are the perianal space, then the ischioanal space, and the the pudendal canal. So, the first one is the perianal space. It is the subcutaneous space located on each side of the anal orifice. So, we have the perianal fascia. It is in the form of a septum that extends medially from the white line of Hilton and laterally to the pudendal canal. It separates the shallow subcutaneous perianal space from the deep ischioanal space. So the perianal space here, the fat is tightly arranged in small loculi formed by the complete septa. Therefore, the infections in this space is very painful due to the tension caused by the swelling. Now we have the ischioanal space, which is large and deep. Here, the fat is arranged in large loculi formed by incomplete delicate septa. So the infections of this space are therefore least painful because swelling can occur without tension. Here we can see the lunate fascia. The lunate fascia arches over the ischioanal fat. It begins laterally at the pudendal canal and merges medially with the fascia covering the deep part of the external anal sphincter. And the fascia divides the space into a suprategmental space above the fascia and tegmental space below the fascia. Finally, we have the pudendal canal, which is also called the Alcock's canal. It is a facial canal in the lateral wall of the ischioanal fossa, enclosing the pudendal nerve and the internal pudendal vessels. It is fused with the lower part of the obturator fascia laterally, the lunate fascia above, perianal fascia medially, and below with the falciform process of the sacrotuberous ligament. The contents, we have ischioanal pad of fat, then the inferior rectal nerve and vessels. They pass through the fossa from the lateral to the medial side. They arch upwards above the fat to supply the mucous membrane, external sphincter and the skin around the anus. Then we have the pudendal canal with its contents, which is present on the lateral wall of the fossa. Then the posterior scrotal or the posterior labial in females. Okay, so the posterior scrotal or the posterior labial nerves and vessels, they cross the anterolateral part of the fossa and enter the urogenital triangle. Next, we have the perineal branch of the fourth sacral nerve. It enters the posterior angle of the fossa and runs over the levator ani to the external anal sphincter. Next, we have the perforating cutaneous branches of S2 and S3 nerves. They appear at the lower border of the gluteus maximus in the posterior part of the fossa, as you can see here. Finally, going into the clinical anatomy. What is the importance of this fossa? What is its functions? It allows the distension of rectum and anal canal during the passage of feces. So, it is acting like a cushion. So, it provides a cushion-like support to the rectum and the anal canal. So, the loss of this fat in debilitating diseases like diarrhea in children may result in the prolapse of the rectum. Okay, so the both perianal space and the ischioanal spaces are common sites of abscesses. So it can burst into the anal canal and rectum internally, resulting in the formation of ischioanal type of anorectal fistula, or it can burst onto the surface of the perineum externally, resulting in fistula in ano. So if the abscess bursts only externally and the healing does not follow, an external sinus is produced. Okay. Now we know that a horseshoe shaped recess is present which connects the two fossae. So because of this recess, the unilateral abscess may become bilateral. Now one important point we have to remember is the hiatus of Schwalbe. This is nothing but occasionally there may be a gap between the tendinous origin of the levator ani and the obturator fascia. Okay, so that forms the apex, right? So the apex, there will be a gap in the apex. Rarely the pelvic organs may herniate, causing the ischioanal hernia. So that gap is only called the hiatus of Schwalbe. Hope you understood. Yeah, this is a diagram showing the fistula, anorectal fistula bursting internally into the anal canal of the rectum and externally to the perineum. Okay. So anyway, thanks for watching, and if you find the video useful, kindly like, comment and share. Please don't forget to subscribe.